All right. Mr. Leigh Wolf. I'm spoiling you, and this is a first for this show. I'm bringing an actual cooler. You want to take a guess what's in here?
Oh, boy.
It's very Americana. It's in honor of you being on the show.
Bud Heavies?
No, damn it. I should have gotten Bud Heavy. No, I've got Miller Lite and Coors Light. What you want?
Oh, yeah. Miller Lite all the way.
Yes. Awesome. And then I'm going to drink a Coors, and I've got one more of each for us, because I figure with you being on the show, I've got to drink at least two of these. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
So
refreshing.
I'm super pumped to have you on, because it's been almost 2 years, I think, since I saw you. Last time I saw you was at CPAC.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, we weren't able to get together for I think it was about 9 months. Then the pandemic hit.
Yep.
And then no one was able to get together.
Yep.
So
now we're here.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good to see you. So what have you been up to recently? Like, what's your workflow like? What projects are you working on? What's going on?
Yeah, so over at the RNC, we do, all kinds of stuff. So we have a full television studio, which is best described as what you would see in a medium television market. So It's not like Fox News crazy, but it's still a pretty robust studio setup.
Is it similar to like what we used to work in at CRTV back in the day?
About double the size of that.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah.
Pretty big.
Yeah, and it has a separate control room that's double the size of the control room back at CRTV. My understanding is CRTV subsequently expanded that studio. But
They did.
Yeah.
They actually, it's almost like it's on steroids compared to what it used to be, which is nice.
I would say ours is roughly 50 feet by 50 feet.
Okay.
So it's a fairly substantial space. We have the standard, 3-camera setup, a built-in new style studio.
What kind of cameras?
So we just got FX9s, which I'm very excited about.
Tell me more. Tell me more about them.
So I'm trying to think how much of this I'm allowed to say. So There was basically, we were told that the shot that we were presenting on television, there was a desire for that shot to get better.
Okay.
So I sat down with our production manager and I said, okay, what do you think? We have an FS5.
Okay.
Do you want to use that?
And did you have 3 of those, or did you just have one?
We have basically 2 field kits. One was the FS5 and a Sony A7S II, which is one kit. And then we have the Blackmagic Pocket 4K and 6K, which was field kit 2.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we got a lot of great gear.
You're like in camera land.
Yeah. Well, we have the full suite of Canon Cinema Prime lenses as well. All kinds of good toys and goodies.
Okay, I'm probably kind of sidetracking here. Did you buy all of that when you came on board? Is this all new gear, or is this stuff even when you arrived was already there?
So I got there June 2017, and we already had the Sony FS5 and the A7S II, and we worked with the FS7 at CRTV, so I was pretty familiar with the FS5, so we did a lot with that. We took a look at the Blackmagic stuff. Our production manager is a bit skeptical of Blackmagic gear.
Okay. What any particular things? 'Cause I've never really worked with Blackmagic gear, so I'm open to hearing some of the criticisms.
Yeah, so it's tough for Blackmagic because they're competing against Sony and Canon, who anyone who's ever worked with that gear basically knows that those things are tanks.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, if you have a Sony cinema camera like an FS5 or an FS7, it's going to work. It's extremely rare.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Blackmagic, I don't know the exact number. It's a small number, but it's a much higher failure rate than Sony's.
Really?
So, where people get like the green screen of death on the monitor and all that.
I got you.
And they're still very reliable, but they're just not as reliable as Sony and Canon.
Sure.
So our production manager was skeptical, but then I showed him the price, and he's like, oh, well.
He's like, sign us up, man.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So we got the 4K. We were very impressed with the picture quality. We started using that a lot for sit-down interviews.
Sure.
Not really as good for run and gun when you're like moving around because there's no built-in internal stabilization, that kind of thing. But very good. It's a very excellent camera.
You got the Blackmagic Pocket 4K and 6K.
Mm-hmm.
You have the FS5, correct? You've got The FX9, correct?
Two
Two of them.
FX9s.
And am I missing? And then you said a Sony A7S II.
Yeah, and in the back we got a Canon C100 that no one's touched for 4 years.
You know, that would probably be an interesting camera just to break out, because I bet you it still gets a beautiful image. It's just not 4K, right?
Yeah, it's 1080. It's got the full frame 35 millimeter sensor on it. It produces a great image, and a lot of people still use them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're in a situation where we have as with any big company, a very lengthy process to dispose of gear.
Okay.
So basically, because that process takes so long, we just sort of have set some cameras off to the side. There's like a Sony A700 back there. I mean, I'm talking like real old school stuff.
Yeah.
I think I even saw a Canon. I don't know the exact nomenclature, but the all-in-one camcorder that was very popular in probably, I would say, like late 2000s. There's one of those back there. So I mean, we have almost enough old gear to start a museum.
So, what are you shooting the most? Are you shooting TV the most? Is that pretty much what you're shooting, or are you shooting, like, what's your day-to-day like?
Yeah, so the pandemic shut down all of our field production, unfortunately, but I'll give you like pre-pandemic as more of an overview. So we would do probably 6 to 9 field shoots a year. Okay. And that would be on a variety of topics. The one we did right before the pandemic was called Victims of Socialism. So we went out and recruited folks who were from Venezuela, from Cuba, to basically tell their stories about, you know, why they left those countries and how that system didn't work for them. And we did that all in hotel rooms, which was surprisingly challenging.
Here in D.C. or?
No, so we went to them. We did Houston, nice. Richmond, Virginia, Miami, Florida, which was amazing.
Yeah.
But Miami especially was a difficult shoot because we were in a place called the Brickell, which is a very popular hotel way up on the God knows what floor, and we had a ton of natural light coming in.
Oh boy.
So we had no choice but to use, like, it was basically a 90-degree angle on a corner unit. Okay. So we had to shoot back towards the door. Okay. Because otherwise the contrast just wouldn't work. Like our field lights just did not have enough juice to overpower the natural light. So we made it work, but I mean, it was like we had a super narrow shot. I think we did something where we took the sheets off the bed and covered a stool and then put like some random piece of like a fake plant on top of the stool to block a switch in the background.
Smart.
And the shot turned out great.
Yeah.
But, you know, it just goes to show when you're out on these field shoots, it really is like, it's like putting together a puzzle, but the pieces are coming out one at a time, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Or it's like, oh, here's another piece. That one goes over here.
It's so funny you bring up the like the overexposed windows and stuff, because I've seen some guys where they actually take window tint like that you'd use for your car, and they'll go and just roll it up, squeegee it up on a window real quick just to control the light. Because, yeah, that's an absolute nightmare. And what's funny is that's what separates like the boys from the girl, you know, the men from the boys, is who can figure out how to combat that. And it sounds like you guys figured it out, because a lot of times people get so infatuated with, I've got to shoot, that's the shot I want, and they forget, like, why don't you just flip it around, you know? Don't shoot against the light, because sometimes we
really wanted to, because our plan was to have, we got that room because of the view it had of the Miami skyline. So the idea was we'd have the subjects in the foreground, and then in the background, just a real light. I think we're going to shoot like f5. Okay. Just a little bit of a blur back there, so you could still make out Miami, but it wouldn't be infinity focus. But it just wasn't. It was just too bright. And on top of that, something we didn't take into consideration was the movement of cloud cover in Miami, which was still a nightmare, but it would have been even worse because we had, like, our natural light was varying wildly even during the interview, because like clouds would come in and it would drop everything like a stop and a half.
So what did you do in that situation, or you're just kind of
we just had to let it ride, and then in post we found the shots we wanted and we tried to edit around it, because the final product ended up being like 40 videos that were like a minute to a minute and a half long of just a really good answer. Sure. Because they ended up wanting like those little nuggets for social media instead of like a full deal. We did, I think, a 10-minute, it wasn't even like a documentary. It was more of like an extended trailer for the whole project. but that was it.
Okay.
So basically what we were able to do was edit around the fluctuations in lighting, and we had shot raw on the Blackmagic camera.
Smart.
So even though it had dropped a stop and a half, it was super easy to pull it right back out.
Nice.
So,
I mean, that's what my understanding with the Blackmagic, the B-Raw or whatever it's called, is pretty fun to play around with and can get you out of some pickles. But at the same time, I'm sure the FX9 does the same thing, right? Does it?
Yeah.
What is its raw Kodak? Do you shoot raw on the FX9, or is that like not a thing? Or are you just shooting ProRes, or what do you shoot?
We brought them in as basically ENG cameras. So right now they're mounted on tripods. We've taken them out into the field one time, and it was great.
Okay.
But we do just the standard Cine L Rec 709.
Sure.
So I haven't even shot log on it at all. But
probably because right out of the camera it just looks beautiful, right? Like
it's incredible. We have the benefit in our studio because we have a full control room. We plugged in the FX9 and left the old school like shoulder mounted ENG cameras.
Oh yeah.
We have one of those with the APS-C sensor on it. It was the first HD camera that they had got over at the RNC, and it has that huge Fujinon ENG lens that everyone's seen with the green stripes around it and all that. And we did it side by side, and our production manager was super skeptical.
Okay.
And he was just like, this is he thought everyone was just like somehow convincing themselves that our shot was inferior to other people's shots. Cause that's what started it, is someone saw another person on TV and was like, wow, that's a great shot. I want what they have.
Really?
So we had to go find out what they had. They had an FS7. Okay. And then because it was coming from on high, we said, okay, well, why don't we just get the best they have? And we did the side by side, and he was blown away. I mean, it is not even, it looks fake right out of the camera. Like a camera should not look that good. It should only look that good after you do hours and hours and hours of color grading, post-processing, etc.
So what does someone like yourself say? Because everything I see, it's like you should get a red, or you should get like the Blackmagic Ursa 4.6K or something like that. I think that's one of the comparable ones, or even like a Canon C300. This thing just destroys all those, would you say?
Well, I know this. They have the C300 Mark IV now, Mark V.
Oh, Jesus, really?
I think so. I could be
like
wrong.
An idiot. I can't even
don't
keep up
Don't blow me up in the comments.
I'm
not a Canon guy, but
loser.
I know the Canon C500 is very comparable to the FX9.
Okay.
It does 12-bit 4K log, and it has RAW capability, but I think you have to go to the external recorder. But you don't have to do a firmware update like you had on I think it was the FS5 had a firmware update, and the FS7 actually, where you had to give them money.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like $1,500, and they would send you the software packet, and then you could externally record RAW.
Yeah.
But the thing is, honestly, there's very few of us out there who need RAW. You know,
sure,
it's just, it's fun to play with. It's good to learn the workflow, but we did a couple of things last year, I guess now the year before, with RAW, and it is great, but you're adding an enormous amount of time just to get to the point where you can start telling your story.
Gotcha. No, I see what you're saying. So who's the most famous person you filmed over these past couple of years that haven't been working with you? You've had to have filmed someone pretty famous.
Yeah, we did. One of our first FX9 adventures was with President Trump.
Really?
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just blame you if his videos suck moving forward. I'm just kidding.
So actually, I have a great anecdote about that. So we got called in to do a thing, and we said, okay, great, we'll go do it. So we got everything set up. We were running down our checklist. We had everything laid out in the studio. I mean, like a military operation.
This is in-house you're doing this, right? Like he's coming to you?
We went to where he was at the time.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, but we had to get all of our gear together to go out that way. So we were there in the studio. I think we spent 12 hours packing, repacking, checking, double checking. And the whole day prior, we had spent 12 hours with the full setup that we were going to use at this location. And we ran through everything. We let everything roll for, we thought, okay, it'll be about an hour.
Sure.
We let everything roll for an hour.
Are there any record limits on the FX9 or no?
It's all limited to the XQD cards. So
okay, but like as long as it's got memory, you can just hit the record button and go. Okay, sorry to cut you off. So you're spending 12 hours.
Well, you have to. I mean, when you're filming the president, like you are not allowed to screw up. If you screw up, like
you're fired.
Yeah, like good luck, move on.
Yeah.
So we got all this stuff set up. We went to the location he was at, and we got everything set up how we wanted it. And we were there. We basically asked the people, like, what is the earliest we can possibly get to this location?
Sure.
And they gave us, I think, a 4-hour head start.
Which is pretty solid considering security measures. You can't expect any more than that, right?
That was after the security measures. So they let us get through security and then be on site with 4 hours. Yeah. And that's something I'd highly recommend to anyone. It's like, look, unless you have legit obligations prior to a shoot, get there as early as possible, get everything set up, get someone in the chair, check the mic, recheck the mic, bust out the backups, like whatever you have, so that when that talent walks in, there's no question.
You're just record button and go.
Yeah, because there's things you'll get stuff set up and you'll just kind of, even if you have a checklist, there'll still be something where it's like, oh crap, the house lights are still on. You know,
yep.
Like, there's stuff like it just doesn't even occur to you. But if you give yourself that extra hour or 2 hours just to sit there and stare at it, because the stress comes out, right? Like once the camera's on the tripod, the lights are up, the mics, everything, then you can really sit there and be like, all right,
you can get nitpicky. Yeah.
Like something's wrong here. So we went through this whole process, and then some of his people came in and they said, look, you know, he's a TV guy. He's going to give adjustments for the shot. Don't take it personally.
Really?
But he's going to tell you what he wants.
But he's going to look at your shot.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
No, I mean, he's an extremely savvy media personality, which people forget because he was president. But he also has this great eye for television. So we had this huge HD monitor, not like the little thing. Where
not like what we're using right here.
Yeah, it was like a full-blown deal, so you could really see it. And we had someone that was, well, it was me, because I'm about the same height. So I sat in the chair. We framed it up to me so that we could get, like, you know, proper framing.
I know why you sat in that chair.
Just so I could say I sat in the same chair.
I'm kidding.
But
so you have a big-ass monitor for him to see himself.
Yeah, and his people basically said, he's going to tell you your shot's terrible, and he's going to tell you exactly what he wants you to do to the camera and the lights and everything to get it the way he wants it. And that's just how he operates. Just be ready for it. I'm like, okay, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, like he cares.
Yeah, because most talent, they'll tell you after the fact, right?
Okay.
Even if you give them a monitor.
It's true.
You'll film the whole thing. You'll have it all in the can. You'll send them a rough cut, and they're like, oh, well, I just don't know if I like this. So we're bracing for impact. We're like, all right, here we go. So he comes in. Of course, like, he's the president of the United States, so I'm, like, sweating bullets. Like,
of course, yeah. Yes, my lighting or my batteries, everybody got their cards. Nobody reformat.
So I'm on camera, and I'm like, just don't make eye contact with him, right? Because I'm just thinking, like, if I make eye contact with him, I'm just going to, like, my whole brain is going to explode, right? Because he's president, you know.
It's a pretty big deal, yeah.
Everyone's got their thoughts, but he's the president of the United States, you know. So I'm, like, I'm almost trying to, like, hide behind the camera where I've got, like, my headphones on. I'm looking through it. And he sits down, and he looks up at me, and he goes, "Did you set up this shot?" I was like, yes, Mr. President. He goes, "This is a great shot. Let's go ahead and get started." And I was like, oh, yes.
So when you're doing this, do you guys have like earpieces in that you're communicating with your team, or like when he walks in the room, it's silence, everyone, like you and maybe one other person's in control outside of him, and that's it? How's that?
We roll max 3 deep. It's the most we'll ever take on a shoot.
Smart. Because
everything we do is nonfiction. Like, the bulk of our thing is interview.
Sure.
We're going to go tell someone's story, basically. And then maybe we need some B-roll of them, like, walking around their neighborhood. We did a thing way back, Women Changing Politics, where we hung out for a day with some of the women in the Republican Party. You just don't need many more people than that. So we're usually within close proximity, and then text message, usually with outside entities who are...
That makes sense. What kind of audio were you using?
So we have a Sennheiser kit that has the lavs, wireless lavs, and then a Sennheiser Boom.
I was going to ask you, did you use both for that shoot so you have like redundancy or just lavalier?
We brought the backup kit when we filmed The President was an FS5.
Oh, so you had it literally a backup kit. So if your main kit shit the bed,
we had
that makes
duplicates.
Sense.
We had duplicates for everything.
Okay, I know I'm probably backtracking. How many cameras were on him when you were filming him?
One.
Yep. And is he directly talking to camera, or is this a little off-cam interview style?
No, he was. I guess I can't go into too much detail, but he was talking to people through the camera. So it was basically like a super awesome like Skype setup. Is what we were doing.
That's damn cool.
Yeah.
God, with that camera, that probably did look amazing. People are probably like, "What the hell am I watching?" Because, all right, I got a question for you. Then we won't stay on him too long. But Ron DeSantis, God, I didn't want to go down the political wheel, but we're not going down the political wheel because I'm actually talking gear here. He did an interview. God, it was a few months back where he was at a podium. Do you guys do green screen stuff? Is that a thing people are doing, or is it all like? DeSantis did this weird thing where I swear I was looking at him like, it's got to be a damn green screen, but I can't tell.
Yeah,
do you do much green screen stuff or not really?
No. I mean, I'm as anti green screen.
Oh, I hate it.
As someone can get. It's extremely rare that you find a legitimate reason to use a green screen. And
it's a nightmare.
It is, because the thing is there's so much technical specificity to pulling a proper key and getting it lit properly. And like the way they're selling this gear, not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but
please.
They're selling people a 3-point lighting kit and a green backdrop.
Yes.
And that people think that's what they need to do a green screen. And it's like, no, that's not at all. You need a whole separate light kit for the green screen. Those 3 lights they're selling you is for your subject.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and by the way, if you're shooting 420 pull down, good luck on the edges. Like you're going to get some spill.
That's a good point, yeah.
If you're doing like ProRes 422, you're going to get a great key. And obviously if you're shooting 444, that's the best you can get. But even for people who've done it before, it's a massive pain. And the people who do it right usually have a permanent setup where they have like the big bank lights.
Yeah.
They flip a switch. That's good to go. Then they can put the person on the mark, and then they have, tweak their lighting however they want.
It's true.
But usually, I mean, a studio backdrop, a bookcase outside. I mean, the whole point of the green screen is you're not able to film the person in the environment in which is required by the project.
Yeah.
And for what I do, that's almost never, because a nice background of any kind is sufficient, right?
Where's the nicest place you filmed over the past few years? The place that you're just like, oh my gosh, or are you not allowed to say?
We did. I mean, the Brickell was very nice in Miami. I mean, that's right on the water, massive, high rise, close to the beach. So that was really nice.
That's cool.
We filmed at, which one is it? Trump Doral, the golf course in Florida.
Were you filming on the course?
No, we were doing, I'm trying to even remember. It's been so long ago now. It was like a rah-rah, let's film volunteers kind of thing.
Cool.
So we actually didn't film at the Doral, so I guess maybe that's not the best example. We stayed at the Doral.
Okay, hey.
But we were, like, we went to a distillery.
Okay.
And we had our people there. They were doing a press conference. It was kind of an outreach event. So we got to film our people and then some volunteers, the business owner. There was like a media scrum there. So we got all the nice sort of behind the scenes shots.
Interesting.
Which was a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, those events can be tough. They're kind of like weddings because that's it. Like, your people come in, they give their speeches, the business owner gives their speech, and then people leave. So if there's any gear problems or whatever the case, there's no like, hang on everyone, like take 2,
Can you give me a nightmare story that's happened? I try to ask everyone that comes on of like, come on, just hit me with some. Give me one good one, like a.
I can only describe this person, unfortunately, as an extremely prominent Republican.
Okay.
Extremely prominent, not Donald Trump, but like someone who everyone knows.
Sure.
We got asked to go to this person's house to film like web ads, right?
Okay.
Like, hey, donate to the cause, that type of thing. So we go out to this massive mansion, super nice person, and they say, okay, we think we can film on this really nice porch. We've got the light coming in, and we said, okay, that's great. We'll set up here. And we got a really nice shot with kind of some trees in the background. And there's a guy there. We'd had the FX9 for I think a week.
Okay.
And there's a guy there who I've never met, but he seems to be calling the shots. Okay. We hadn't talked to him until we got there. And he leans in and he goes, What are you filming at? 1080? 4K? I'm like, well, we were going to film at 1080 because, 4K is a lot and it sounds like we're filming a lot of stuff and we just have one card because it's a brand new camera, right? And he says, well, let's do 4K. It's only 10, 15 second ads.
Which can take forever.
We ended up doing over 100 takes.
100?
And we got through half of them for a variety of reasons, right?
Sure.
It wasn't just the town. It was like, a truck drove by. Yeah.
Anything can happen.
So we get halfway through, and I'm filming at this mansion with this extremely prominent Republican, and I start seeing memory card low. Like, this is not happening.
Yeah.
This is not happening right now. I have this super famous person right in front of me, and we're out of memory.
Yeah, no timeouts available.
This is crazy. So I say, they finish the thing, and I say, we need to do some stuff on the camera real quick. It looks like we'll have to, go ahead and delete some things here. We did the 4K, and then my production manager jumps in because he can tell I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, why don't we call it a 5? Let's just go ahead and call it a 5. I'm like, all right, cool. So everyone leaves this porch and goes back inside, and I'm sitting there like, dude, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
We have there's no way that I can get 256 gigs or maybe it's 128 gigs, whatever it was.
Onto a laptop or whatever.
Like onto a laptop. Of course, we didn't have our card reader because we're not going to need a card reader. We're filming and then we'll bring it back and edit it, right? Oh, so I'm like, dude, this is not good. This is not good at all. This is like towards the end of the election. Like this is the last big push for donations. So I'm like, well, what are we going to do? And he says, I'm going to call back to the studio. We have another one of these cards, which of course, card reader. We only had one card. I'm going to have him bring the card reader out. We'll dump the files and we'll wipe the card and then reset. And that's what we did. And it ended up being, I think, 40 minutes, but they didn't care.
Sure.
They were super cool about it. And I'm really glad they were because they would have been well within their rights to be like, I don't know what kind of nonsense operation you're running. You're clearly not professionals.
Yep.
Get the hell out of here. Your boss is going to be hearing about it. But that's just one example of how, you have to sort of imagine the unimaginable when you prep for these shoots because in your mind, you've done the math. You know what your bit rate is for 1080. You know that works out to X number of hours. And you'll be great because there's no possible way that the person could ever take more than 3 hours or whatever. But then you get there and some random guy's there who seems to be representing this person.
Yeah.
And is like, no, take it to 4K.
Like,
and now your 3 hours just became less than an hour. And then all these complications pop up. We had a trash truck. There was one line where they had to kind of a tongue twister. So the person kept stumbling over it. Take, retake. And we got well above an hour and then the memory card filled up. But
hey, I guess the one thing I would say is I think where you made the best call is just, and this is a lesson that I've learned, and it takes some stones to do it in real time, but kind of admit to what's going on to the person that's in front. Not that you were saying chaos was breaking out, but hey, can we take a time out? Can we take a breather? Because I think sometimes people will just not say anything. And then they'll wait till you get in the editing bay and they're like, hey, where are the rest of those takes? And there's some asshole that's like, oh, we filled up the memory card. What'd you want me to do? And it's like, right. Bro, you have to say something. I guess I'm applauding you actually addressing, because I feel like a lot of people tuck their tail between their legs and they just I won't say anything. I don't want to say anything. And it's like, you have to say something. You have to fix it.
A good rule of thumb for these types of things and just life in general, problems unaddressed do not get better with time.
They get worse.
They only get worse.
Yeah.
So if you hit a technical brick wall when you're on a shoot and you don't call that timeout, as you phrased it, or throw the flag is another one I've heard, it's only going to get worse. So however bad it's going to be in the moment, it's going to be 10 times worse if you just pretend like you're filming this person.
I'm sure there's been people that do it because they're embarrassed. Like you don't want to admit your fault. But
in my case, and in a lot of people's cases, it's easy to sort of like slip back into the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people aren't independent contractors. They're with an entity like a firm or a news station, or in my case with the party. So you could just pretend and get back and then send them the files. And then when they say, where's the rest? You say, well, what files? That's all we have. And then what? Then that guy's got to go to the top. They got to come down to me, and I got to say, I don't know what they're talking. And it's just, you could try to slip away, but it's probably not going to work out for you.
Man,
especially when you're dealing with money.
Well, yeah, and all of this boils down to money if you think about it. I mean, time's money. Yeah. So that's wild, man. I didn't even think about that. That, just something as simple as someone saying, hey, bro, not 1080 for this shoot. We want 4K. And you're like,
well, and of course, the deliverable ended up being 720.
Really?
Yeah. They came back and they're like, hey.
So even 1080 would have been more than enough because you were compressing it down.
And this, I think, I'm pretty sure this guy was like a personal assistant who was trying to like be proactive.
Sure.
And that brings up another good point is, like, when you go out and do these things, there has to be an extremely clear chain of command, so to speak. Who's the producer? Who in this group has the ability to say yes or no? And anyone who's not on that list, you got to put them to the side. Because especially in politics, there's a lot of people who love to get involved. And a lot of times it's helpful. So I don't want to like be rude to all these people. A lot of times it is helpful, but it can get to a point of chaos unless the video team has very clearly said, okay, this person's the producer. And sometimes the producer is not even from the video team. Like, we've had producers from the press shop, communications, the political department, and that's great because everyone knows that that person's in charge.
Sure.
We're not going from 1080 to 4K unless that person says yes. So that's another thing that's very helpful, because if you get folks who are not technically savvy making technical decisions without consulting people like us, it puts us in a jam. Because in this case, I had no idea who this person was.
Sure.
For all I knew, this person was a top dog of some entity, and I'm not going to talk back to him,
Yeah. No, you played your cards right. Do you guys fly drones at all for any of your videos and stuff like that? Is that something you incorporate, or?
No, I mean,
I know that's a random question, but
no, drones are really popular these days. I think they're cool. I think they have extremely limited production value. Oh, thank you.
What do you mean by limited production value? Or just like
if you're doing vlogging, they're great.
True.
Right? Like, you can show people like, hey, I'm out here, like Casey Neistat's the classic example.
Yeah.
He's showing these great vistas. He's out running, that kind of thing. They're good for establishing shots. If you want to show people, okay, we're out on this farm. I just don't, well, one, you can't fly them in DC. So
I tell everybody, that's the first question everyone asks when they're like going to hire me. Can you fly your drone? I'm like, we're in a no-fly zone.
Right.
Like, the Secret Service will show up at my door in 2 seconds.
Yeah. So we don't, that's probably the main reason we've never bought a drone, because we've thought about it for like field work and stuff like that. But, people have been doing establishing shots without drones for 100 years.
Totally. Yeah.
So, they're cool. And I think for certain types of videos, they make a lot more sense. Like, real estate's a good example. But for what we do, I mean, all we really need to do to set up what we're setting up is just a real nice establishing shot of whatever facility it is we're at, because it almost doesn't matter. Like,
sure.
For what we do, what matters is the person, not the place.
They need to be beautifully lit, well exposed, good
and
audio.
A lot of times it's not even what's going on at that place. Like, the place isn't even part of what we're discussing. Like, for the victims of socialism, we had individuals discussing, like, this one gentleman, amazing story about how he basically went house to house, basement to basement, running from Hugo Chavez's secret police, got on a boat to Trinidad, got caught in a storm, got lost, got picked up by a fishing vessel, finally got to Trinidad, got to Miami, all that kind of thing. And we were filming him in a conference room at some hotel in Houston.
Sure.
So like my establishing shot for that is probably going to be stock footage.
Yeah.
You know, like something in Venezuela, something,
Sure.
A news clip, fair use, that kind of thing. So the utility of the drone for what we do, it just isn't really there.
Fair enough.
So
how much editing are you doing these days, or do you just shoot for the most part?
The bulk of what I do is editing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So a lot of our content is what we call rapid response videos, where
I gotcha.
You take like a theme in the news. Like, for example, right now, the whole immigration crisis is a big one.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll take all the news reports talking about how it's bad and Biden's not doing a good job and all these different things need to be happening. And then I'll basically compress that down as much as is humanly possible to get, you know, this really condensed, concentrated analysis of how bad it's going for Team Biden. Set it to some music. I'll even sometimes throw like LUTs onto like really garbage 720p footage.
It'll make it look good.
Yeah, and
creates a mood. Almost.
Yeah, and it's actually more effective than you might imagine. I mean, it obviously isn't going to look as good as putting a LUT on, you know, your 4K raw footage.
Sure.
But you can give it, especially now. I mean, LUTs are everywhere. You download a pack of LUTs for like $20.
Heck, you can get them for free if you really want them.
And to all you youngins out there, it didn't used to be that easy.
Yeah, no.
You had to do it manually.
That's hilarious.
But now it's like Instagram. You just like drag it on there, and it's like, oh, boom, there you go.
Are you still editing in Final Cut?
Yeah, I'm editing in Final Cut.
Yeah, cheers to that, dude. That's what was hilarious the first time I met you, is that you edited in Final Cut.
I'm fine with the Premiere Suite. I really am. It just has performance issues. That's it. I mean, you can edit in there, and like you get these weird pop-ups. Things disappear out of nowhere. Obviously, it doesn't have the autosave feature unless they brought that in recently. I mean, I haven't.
God, I
haven't messed around
tell
with
you
it
how
in a
to
while.
work in it.
It's funny because I have the whole Creative Cloud on my computer, so I'll mess around in After Effects, like doing like face tracking is the new hotness to put like,
course.
You know, I can make someone like a clown, which in politics is a
Is
great
pretty
skill
clutch
to have.
to have that tracking feature.
But no, Final Cut is extremely stable.
Yep.
The magnetic timeline, for those who are willing to figure out how it works. I know you did that removed from Storyline for a while.
Now
you still
I don't.
doing that?
No,
you finally use the magnetic timeline?
I still stack quite a bit, but I definitely the magnetic timeline. It's so weird because like that's one thing I love about just editing and cameras, and is everyone does things a little bit different, and there's reasons like the way you edit might be a little bit different to me, but I find it really unique how everyone edits, and like the magnetic timeline is something I was just neglecting. I'd say probably ignorantly. Is that even a word? Ignorantly?
Yeah.
Yes. That's what I was doing.
It's confusing. Like if you're coming over from Adobe Premiere, where you have to do like the ripple edit, or you have to just, some people manually drag it over. It doesn't act how you think it's going to act, and it can confuse people. But once you understand how it acts and why it acts that way, it's pretty cool.
Well, and I mean, even when I met you years ago when we were working together, to where Final Cut is now, Final Cut's so much more advanced in regards to, I think, the capabilities and what, like, it's not Adobe by any means, but it definitely is starting to get a little bit more advanced. But what does most of your team edit on?
So we are rebuilding our team right now, and I'm going to insist on Final Cut because I allowed people to choose for years.
Sure.
And it just creates problems. And the most notable one.
And are you? How many people are you currently leading? Or
so right now there's 2 of us, but because things ebb and flow. So we had a lot of people leave and that kind of thing. But we're going to reconstitute probably. I would guess we'd end up anywhere between 5 to 7 total people on the team. Yeah, by the time we get to the next election. But I let people split, and one, it's much more difficult for me to mentor and teach on a software system that I don't use every day.
Sure.
So that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is I can't readily transmit a project file to a non-Final Cut editor and get a timely result.
It's a nightmare.
So they can get the project file, open it up, and find, because they all have Final Cut too.
Yeah.
But then like they're kind of in this new world that they don't understand.
Sure.
So I think what I'm going to do moving forward is just standardize it and say, look, if you want to do some projects over in Adobe, that's fine, but I really need you to be doing your main squeeze in Final Cut so that you can send me stuff and I can send you stuff, hand off the hard drive. Because the way they have the project files set up, it's super convenient. All I have to do is give them the hard drive. They can either drag it over or just work it right from the hard drive.
It's true.
And we can use templates. We can standardize everything. When I make a template for a certain style of video that has, you know, the whatever titles I like, the LUT, the music, what have you.
Yeah.
They can just have that there ready to go. And I can say, okay, boom, we're doing a negative hit on the economy. There's that template. Pull it up. You know, it's got the factory worker with the generic stock, like, sorry, we're closed sign that every political ad has, you know?
Oh, gosh, politics.
Yeah.
That's funny. Nice. So, I'm trying to think of other things. Like, what do you find yourself doing in your spare time these days? Do you film at all? Do you edit at all? Or do you pretty much detach yourself from your full-time work on your spare time?
So I have a little side business.
Oh, yeah.
Lincoln Creatives.
Oh, I remember. Okay. Yeah. Tell me more,
so
though.
I finally got that going. I got, you know, my big job is very supportive,
sure,
which I appreciate. And, you know, they're letting me do some stuff on the side. And it's a lot of editing.
Okay.
It's not a lot of filming. And I think a lot of that has to do with the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I think as we come out of that, I'll be able to do more filming. But yeah, I mean, some of it's small businesses, some of it's political, but almost all of it is they kind of send me what they're trying to do, and then I use the myriad stock footage,
sure,
voiceover people, basically bring all those pieces together to get them the type of advertisement that they want. So
nice. What 2021? What's the hottest social media platform that you and your clients are all working on? What's the one that's the best bang for the buck? It can't be Facebook, is it? God, I hope not. Oh, you're gonna say it is. I know
my girlfriend's a chef.
Okay.
And she runs her own jam business called Pump Up the Jam.
What's a jam business?
PumpUpTheJam.shop,
like,
for all your
jam like jelly and jams?
Yeah, like
dude, let me film a video for her.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you
I'll
want
make a sick video.
But she's found most success on Instagram.
Okay.
Of all places. And I think Instagram, for whatever reason, is a place where people expect to go out and find new products and services.
That's a good point.
Whereas Facebook is where you expect to go out and find friends, family, what individuals are up to.
I've never thought about that.
But you don't, like, no one's going on Instagram to keep up necessarily with, like, old friends. That usually happens on Facebook. And there's some crossover, of course.
Sure.
I would say if you're doing paid advertisements, YouTube seems to be a pretty good place to put that money.
Is that where a lot of your content ends up landing?
Yeah.
Or?
I mean, all political entities advertise on all platforms, but a lot of it is on YouTube.
Have you guys been smashed with YouTube just purging anyone and everyone talking about politics? Because I know a couple people I've worked with. I watch their numbers on Social Blade, and they just gone.
Well, we're lucky because the way we get traffic is very different, and we're probably one of the only entities that can do it. We make a video, but then we promote it out as like a story. Okay. And we say, hey, we're about to release this. Would you like to write this up? And, you know, a conservative blogger, someone like that will say, okay, cool. And they'll write up a whole thing about how we're releasing this new ad. They get the exclusive, and then boom, they go public on their gigantic website. Yeah. And then we get a ton of traffic. So we don't necessarily... We found a way to beat the algorithm.
I was going to say, you're not just throwing it up there and fingers crossed, hoping that it...
Like, we don't even really do SEO on the videos. I mean, I see that. I mean, because honestly, everything that I can see in regards to YouTube and everything that I hear is that, like,
don't bank on it going viral on its own anymore. Regardless of where you stand, which I got to applaud that it's not just a right or left thing. They're just full steam ahead, get out of the way. But it's unfortunate seeing that happen. But then again,
YouTube is tough. I mean, you get this, but a lot of people who are on YouTube, they don't understand that it's a process. You're building a channel, you're building a following that takes time. You got to keep making the content over and over again. It's not just, hey, look at me, I'm great.
Yeah.
You know, now I'm famous and I have all this money. Like, you're building a business essentially on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a pervasive but false impression among a lot of younger creators that all they have to do is like ride down some big city on a one wheel and like film themselves.
And then you're famous and rich and it's your job.
Right. And like they do the one video and it's like, okay, cool, that's it. But it's not. Like you have to, what you do on YouTube has to somehow be slightly different, right? You can't just copy and paste from someone else. And it has to be valuable. Like what you're saying has to be useful. And you do a bunch of this on your channel where you're like, hey, this product does X, Y, Z. Here's how it can help you. That's good information. But a lot of people get on YouTube, especially in the political realm, and they are literally copying. You can almost tell who they're copying by what they're talking about, where they see whoever, famous conservative, they'll cover the exact same topics. They'll even replicate their speaking style and mannerisms. And it's like, look, man, you're just a knockoff version of this. Like, if I want this, I'm going to the actual person, you know?
Well, I'll say this. One, people that are out there doing that, it kind of stinks that they're getting labeled with that, but at the same time, I would say keep powering through, only because I think that's how people actually then create their own character.
Right.
Because in the beginning, like, I always hear this term, R&D, obviously, but rob and duplicate. So if you want to go into a field, like if I want to do cameras or something like that, I should go look at the top camera people, look what they're doing, duplicate it, and then try to figure out how I can make it my own.
Right.
I would guess what you're probably alluding to is where people are maybe too scared to become themselves, and they just keep like following what they are quote unquote being told is the way to do it. Maybe.
Well, and that's a good point too. That's worth bringing up. Is like there is nothing original under the sun. Nothing.
No, everything's been done before.
Like,
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
anything you're gonna do, someone has already done.
Yeah.
But the genius of it is taking two chocolate chip cookie recipes and saying, okay, what's the best part of this one and what's the best part of this one? Now here's my chocolate chip cookie recipe.
Totally.
And it has the best elements of both. So yes, like I agree that people should be inspired and influenced by other people for sure. Just don't expect to go very far if you're just going to take someone else's recipe and duplicate the recipe without adding any of your own twist or spin on it.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people do. And it's, you know, they spin their wheels for a year and then that's it.
It's YouTube in particular is rough, man, because like you said, everyone thinks that they can just get on there and film their lives and their lives is so interesting. And I will say most people's lives are interesting. The problem is like you said, they're just trying to be too much like someone else rather than be themselves. And what seems to work is when you do authentically become yourself online is when people start to actually like you.
Yeah.
Whether you are an ant farmer down in your parents' basement.
Yeah.
There was, dude, my buddy and I always laugh. There's like an ant farm channel that's got 1 million subscribers. I'm like, I tell my parents when they're like, why are you doing YouTube? I'm like, because I know for a fact there's 100,000 people around the world that resonate with me. 100%.
Right.
There have to be. There's 100,000 people that resonate with you. So, like,
right.
you know, for all those people that are discouraged, I always kind of, like, jokingly make that statement of, like, I do think that if you can power through and spend enough time with it, YouTube can show results. But, yeah, if you're just hopping on there to become a wham-bam instant success, you will fail and fail pretty hard, I think.
Well, and a lot of people aren't, they can't press through the discouragement of the early days, which is inevitable.
Dude, even this thing will only maybe get like 50 to 100 views. And like, I'm happy with that because maybe
we're going viral.
Well, like one day, like we're going to be in our, 40s because I'm getting up there. I'm 35. God. But, one day I'll look back at this and it'll all be worth it. But,
right.
you know, in the meantime, sometimes it's brutal. But, yeah, I mean, you're not going to get a lot of views in the beginning. It takes forever.
Yeah, but it should. You know what I mean? Like it should.
Nothing
because,
good ever came easy.
But and the other part of it too is it's unless you're political, because political channels can get yoinked pretty regularly. But what you've built can almost never be lost once you have it on YouTube.
I've never thought about that.
Like you really have to do something. Like once you get to 100,000 subscribers, 200,000 subscribers, whatever the case, it is almost impossible to ever lose that source of revenue, even if you reduce your productive output on the channel. So it should be hard.
Yeah.
Because once you get it, no one can ever take it away from you unless you're a conservative on YouTube who says things the big tech companies don't like.
I'm just kidding.
He'll edit that out.
No, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna let it ride. Watch it get demonetized. Like, damn it. What's funny though is you said this. My parents were in town last week, and I was telling my dad. I was like, I have this weird theory. I was like, you know how people invest in the stock market. You know, you got to make money off of your money. You need to be making money while you're working, and not working. And I'm like, is that what YouTube? 30 years down the road, if I've made 3,000 videos that are online, is that where I'm actually going to one day look back and go, holy shit, I'm making like 50 to 100, maybe $200 a day just sitting here twiddling my thumbs because I made all these videos from 20 years ago that people are still watching. And
well, and the people who are doing the best work on YouTube in terms from that aspect of like long-term profitability are people who are making videos that will essentially be relevant forever. There's a guy, I have no idea what his name is, but I watch his stuff. He runs a channel called Dark Skies and Dark Docs.
I'll have to watch it.
And it's all voiceover and old war footage. And he has this really like monotone, kind of scary voice. And
yeah.
Like, and that's when the B-52 came storming over Russia and dropped its bombs. But it's great. Like it's very bite-sized. It's the kind of video you'd watch, you know, where it's like, okay, my train gets in 20 minutes and I just need to kill some time. I'm going to watch this guy's like 12-minute documentary on how the U.S. Air Force lost a nuclear bomb off the coast of North Carolina. That is always something that someone is going to want to watch because he's talking about something, the facts of which will never change. Now, you can still make great money on other things, but you just have to accept the fact that, like, for example, GH5 content in like 5 years,
shelf life will probably be gone.
Yeah, like there's not going to be a ton of people who are like, I'm thinking about buying a GH5 in 2025. Well, I mean, you'll still have them. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
this guy, I'm telling you, he could be a billionaire and he would still shoot on the GH5.
Probably. Got that 4K 60. Woo!
But yeah, I mean, but it still has a good run of years and years and years. So, part of it too is I don't know that a lot of people approach YouTube and content from a business mindset. That's because everyone's out there telling them like, just make videos about what you like.
Yeah.
It's like, to start off with, sure. If you're trying to learn the skills of filming, editing, lighting, sure. Do film whatever you want to film. But once you get the skills, your mentality should shift a little bit. And I'm not saying, look, I don't know anything about plumbing. I'm not going to start a plumbing YouTube channel because I don't have that expertise. But I could start a channel on military hardware, for example, right? I'm not an expert, but I know a little bit about it.
Sure.
It's certainly not what I'm most passionate about, but that probably would get a lot of views because people love like, tanks and planes and all that. So I think you do have to shift your focus a little bit into, what is stuff that people are going to want to watch, not necessarily what my passion is, because if nobody wants to watch your passion, you're just wasting your time.
Dude, those are some truth bombs, because the videos that are ones where I'm like really like, I'm happy about it, those are usually the ones that fall on the face. But then if it's something where my buddy used to say, he says this all the time, he's like, you either need to be asking a question, answering a question, or teaching someone something. I might be butchering that, but that's what he was saying was like, that's how he becomes searchable.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to that is or telling a story.
Ooh. Okay, yeah. No, that'd be like the 4 pillars, basically.
Yeah.
It didn't. All your videos need to revolve around some of those things, and it's shelf life. Because every time I go and I'm like, hey, watch how to film watch my behind the scenes for the gear and beer. Well, nobody really gives a shit about that. But if I said, learn how to set up a podcast, then I would get a ton of views. Or, well, maybe. You never know. But
well, and that's the thing. It is hit or miss. I mean, I have the most popular video I ever made in my entire life got 25 million views across 3 platforms.
What the hell was it?
It was a meme.
Oh, really?
It was a reaction meme. It was a total throwaway project when I was at Town Hall. It was something like, Republicans react to Hillary Clinton email investigation. And it was just like, the video of that guy from the award show when someone starts singing and the guy's like, really aggressive. Yeah. It was that. 25 million views. Took me 5 minutes to edit it, right? But then conversely, we did like Victims of Socialism, right? Put tens of thousands of dollars and hours of work into this thing. And it did okay, but it probably did 1 million views total across all platforms. And that was for dozens of videos.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I'm getting at is like, you just have to keep going.
Oh, totally.
And just like take the L and move on.
But the thing that I will say in regards to your Victims of Socialism is shelf life that while currently it might not be seeing as much success as you want, down the road, who knows, 30, 40 years from now, you could be winning awards for it, all of a sudden, because people are like, oh my God, but...
Well, and to be fair, I think the dynamic shifted, because that obviously we were making that when Bernie Sanders was still very much the likely Democratic nominee.
I got you.
But then the whole thing with Biden happened, where he ended up being the nominee.
Yeah.
And, say what you will about Biden, but Biden has never openly said, I'm a socialist.
Yeah, you can't ping him on that one.
I mean, I guess you could, but it's much easier to get Sanders. So, excuse me. And once Sanders was out, the desire to keep working the project and to keep promoting the projects fizzled because that wasn't as effective of a line of attack. So,
well, I got a funny one for you. A group I worked with in the past, we did a video on nationalism. And it landed in the midst of the election. And needless to say, it didn't go over very well. Like, production-wise, it was great. The story was great. But timing-wise, it just seemed positioned that it was going against, actually, not who were we even particularly trying to go against, but just that topic at that timing was poorly released. Like
they thought you were attacking
They thought
Trump.
We were attacking him, and it was subtle jabs, but it was more of just like, let's not fall down this trap. Like, there's some good and there's some bad here.
Right.
But most people, I mean, it's just like anything. You watch the first couple of minutes, and as an editor and a shooter, I'm supposed to rope you in, which doesn't mean that I'm going to just throw softballs at you at the beginning of my video.
Right.
It means I'm going to hit you with some hard stuff. And so people immediately jump to the conclusion of like, oh, F you. And it's like, well, hold on. We're trying to have a conversation.
Well, that's another good thing to mention is like political content creation is street ball. I mean, it is a tough area to be making content in because people are absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
They'll mock your editing. They'll mock like everything.
Do you get that a lot?
Oh, all the time. I mean, they don't know who I am. I mean, they could find out.
Oh, you're saying online.
Yeah.
You know what? If somebody would mock my editing, I'd almost appreciate it because be like, wow, they're actually like, they're watching it for that level of things.
No, it'll be hilarious. Like
really?
we'll do like an explainer video shot on an FX9. We'll take a week to edit it, graphics. It'll get reviewed by half a dozen people.
Sure.
Every editor will look at it.
It's ready for TV, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's flawless, and we put it out there. And like the first comment will be like, "Who edited this? A 12-year-old?" And oh,
you're like, come on, man.
I'm not 12. That hurts. It cuts me deep.
I'm 32. Come on.
But I mean, that's just something I throw out there for anyone who makes political content, is getting started in it, wants to break into it. Is don't read the comments. And I know people say that for all industries, but it's especially true in politics. because people are brutal. Politics is a very tough business to do content creation in. And especially just from a production standpoint, it's very difficult because, you could be working on, I'm trying to think of a good example. What was the controversy when Biden took office? Oh, here's one. So we were hitting Biden for not doing a press conference. And we could have put together a bigger production about how, he's avoiding this for these reasons, gone and pulled all the clips from the campaign. We ended up deciding against it because at any day, he could have made that piece of content irrelevant.
Yes.
So we could have spent 2 weeks on a really good production with like a voiceover explaining how he's been avoiding press conferences for years and he always screws up at press conferences and all these types of things. But then boom, Wednesday comes around and there he is at a press conference. So the premise of it is kind of no longer relevant. And that makes production in the political world tough. And the only people who can really do the day-to-day are like the news sites.
Yeah.
I mean, because they have, and it's kind of basic stuff. Well, I shouldn't say it's basic. It's a very specific style where you have like the podcast hosts. They've got their producers who give them the notes. They turn the cameras on.
It's step and repeat day in and day out.
But that's the only way you can do that kind of daily grind.
Do you guys actually produce a product like that out of your shop or no?
Not right now. We are.
You're going to probably have to.
We're in the process of updating our studio facilities.
Yeah.
And that's going to include a full podcast studio.
Smart.
Yeah. So once that's in there, we are going to start doing regular interval podcasts. I don't think it'll be daily, at least not to start with.
Well, the beauty of the podcast is, like, even like this, if I wanted to do it the right way, and I would do this if honestly we were getting a ton of views, I would film an hour piece of content with you, right, and then I would cut it into multiple pieces of content, and I'd have a main page, and then I'd have a clips page. Right. I mean, I'd follow the Joe Rogan model. And I would, and I'm sure that's what you guys will probably be able to do. If you even only film once or twice a week, you'll have enough clips to kind of.
We did podcasts in a very odd way for a while.
What were you guys doing?
It worked, but it was strange. We have just the regular TV studio.
Okay.
So we were basically like, imagine your nightly newscast, except it's a video podcast. So it's kind of like the U-shaped table, but it's just tough because this format is much more conducive to the video podcast.
Sure.
Our setup, everyone's kind of like angling to talk to each other.
And how many people did you have on there?
It was up to 4, but usually 2.
Two's always
where it
good.
Would be like one person interviewing a prominent politician or something like that. But a TV studio is set up to face the camera, not to face another person. So that's why
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so that's why we're gonna try to get something more like this, where people are facing each other, and then we can just set the cameras up.
There's something more intimate about, even if like the audience has to watch us this way, is seeing you and I directly talking to one another. It kind of brings them into our environment a little bit more than if you and I were just staring directly at them. But you know what I mean?
Well, and the thing that's interesting about podcasts is you kind of have a fourth wall. You know what I mean? Like we're here doing our own thing, and the viewer is almost like spying on us. We're like they're in on the conversation. But with TV, all they do is break the fourth wall. They're staring eagle eye right into the camera the whole time.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, so that's why it just didn't work great to try to do a podcast in a TV studio, because people aren't used to that aesthetic being associated with a podcast. Because this format's awesome, because we're here in your studio drinking some beers and chit-chatting. Yep. And everyone watching is sort of almost like
they're basically right there sitting with us.
Yeah.
Hopefully drinking a beer.
Yeah, and they're like listening in to like a cool conversation. But that's not news. Like news is, I'm talking through the camera to you at home on your couch. I talk, you listen. I have information you want, and I'm providing it to you while you passively consume it.
Do you think that people are transitioning, that we're moving into a phase of people not wanting news, but more just wanting to casually be a fly on the wall?
I mean, it sure seems like it.
Because they feel like it might be more authentic.
I mean, like CNN is really struggling right now with ratings.
Yeah.
MSNBC's struggling. Fox is doing better, but it is interesting because when you look at the coming up from YouTube and all these content creators, there's now a push down from over-the-top streaming services from like Fox has Fox Nation now.
Yeah.
Where they're basically, Fox Nation is Netflix for news junkies.
God, I've told my dad he's got to stop watching that shit.
I like Fox.
No,
I like Fox.
It's fine. Hey, here's one thing you're kind of touching on, and you said this years ago, and I was watching YouTube recently, and one of my favorite creators said this, and it had to do with politics. And he was like, look, the way the news should work nowadays, and if you're a big donor or a big funder, is you need to go fund basically little mini YouTubers or create a space where they all come and the cream of the crop rises to the top, but you just offer this free space where all this talent comes, showcases their talent, and then whoever kind of fulfills the need, boom, now you have a show. I feel like you said that years ago that somebody should be making an incubator like that, and I mean, YouTube is basically that without a permanent space for all these people to...
Well, the way it's going, in my view now, is that guys like you and I, we will have our own individual OTT streaming service, you know, Trey Lowell app, Leigh Wolf app, whatever, Lowell Productions. And if people want the best content, that they got to pay $5 a month. But there's also the teaser content on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, but everything is driving, I guess it's a funnel is what they say, you know, and the bottom of the funnel is the app where people go on Roku, download the app, it's $5, and that's the real good stuff. Like your best podcast when you're interviewing people like Leigh Wolf, that goes behind the paywall.
You're not getting this one for free.
Because that's what people really want to see. But no, I mean, that's what I think it is. Yeah. And like, that's kind of what Joe Rogan's doing. His is a little bit different because it's a licensing deal.
Sure.
But it's the same model in the sense of like all those YouTube clips that everyone watches, they're all designed to drive you to Spotify and give Spotify money.
Yeah, they're having a hard time getting people to Spotify because their user base was already so familiar with YouTube. Like,
well, and they're putting like really good stuff on YouTube. Like you feel like you're still getting your fix.
Oh, I do.
With like JRE clips.
Yeah.
And I do think eventually they're going to stop posting to YouTube. I think Joe Rogan said they're doing like a 1-year phase out in like September of this year.
I hate to say it, I don't know if I'll listen to him if he's not on YouTube. Because I'm just a casual passerby where I'm like, oh, Rogan's talking about aliens. Cool.
But here's the thing, though, is like you're already not in his numbers. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm not in the equation.
Right, because his numbers are downloads on the iTunes store. Like that's true. That's why Spotify was going after him. I mean, I think the YouTube traffic is nice, but they want those downloads. You know?
That's where the money's at.
Right. And I'm trying to think. I think the only episode of Joe Rogan I listened to all the way through was probably when he interviewed Jordan Peterson, just because he's such a fascinating guy that thinks at a level that I can't even comprehend. But for the most part, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's truckers out there who are doing, you know, full episode every day type of thing. But
well, when I go on road trips, I find myself listening to a full episode of Rogan. But that's a lot. That's a big lift. Which, I got 2 more questions for you to wrap up this. When was the last time you went back to California?
I was there 2 weeks ago.
All right. You get to see all your family and stuff?
Yeah, so my grandfather had an adverse reaction to the second COVID shot, unfortunately.
Is he okay?
Yeah, he's fine. He had like a rash, basically, but he's 91, so they were pretty concerned about it.
Sure.
But he's okay. Get vaccinated. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the vaccine. I got my shot. But he did have like a little rash from it, so he ended up in the hospital.
Okay.
So I flew back out there to help him out. Thinking about working my way back out there at some point, but it's tough. I mean, it really is tough. I mean, there's a lot of creators out there. There's a lot of demand for creators out there.
Dude, if you go there, I need to hook you up. You should just run. I got a dude I'll talk to you about off camera, but you should take what you know and hook up with these production guys out there and do campaign stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's just tough because it's, you know, you get out of your 20s and into your 30s and you start thinking about, you know, where do I want to be for the next long period of time? Because in my 20s, I was all over the place. I was in the military, Afghanistan, Morocco. I lived in San Diego, working at One America for a while. back in San Francisco, working at KSFO, doing conservative radio, came out here, was at Town Hall, went back on active duty in New Orleans for a while.
Yeah,
I was
remember
just
that.
bouncing
Yeah.
everywhere. And, but eventually your appeal shifts to where, money's better. You're not so worried about how the bills are going to get paid. And you start thinking about, like, where do I want to be where I can, like you have here, like, I want to be somewhere where I
plant
can,
your roots.
Yeah, like build this kick-ass studio and have like space for it and all that. So I don't know if that's California for me though. I think
Arizona?
I'm thinking probably Texas. Yeah.
You should go to Texas. You'd probably fit right in there. And it's a happy medium. Like, you get closer to the family, right? I mean...
Yeah, and I mean, I've been talking about it for years. And we have family in Dallas. Because my mom was born in Dallas. My grandfather was born in Dallas. So we got pretty deep family roots in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I mean, hey, man, the housing there is so cheap that, like...
my wife I'm a Floridian, man.
You could almost buy a house to live in and then a house to just, like, build a bunch of sets in. I mean,
for what I paid for this place, I could go buy a piece of property down in Florida and have, like, a monster home with a studio in the back.
I mean, I could probably get my parents' house in California. It was a nice house, but, pretty modest. You look at it, you think normal house. Just because of where it's located, it's worth over $1 million. You can get that same house in Texas for $200,000.
But when you go to Texas, I'll come visit you.
All right.
I have one other question, though, for you. Yeah. You guys are going to be ramping up with what you do. You mentioned you're going to be hiring some more people, things like that. What kind of positions are you going to be hiring?
So I only hire creative producers. I do not hire editors. I do not hire audio people. The reason for that is I want people who are comfortable operating fully independently.
Sure.
With, of course, I'm there to be of assistance and all that, but we only bring people in who we can say, like, we do both, where they can pitch ideas or we give them assigned projects, which is pretty standard, and then they can just run with it and bring me a good product that I can give edits to. So that's basically the full deal. And then, of course, there's, we all kind of pitch in with production assistants down in the studio and that type of thing, but for the most part, creative producers, people who are really good at editing, and then we train them up. Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing over at the party is we've had a lot of people go off and do great things from the Republican Party, and I think it's fantastic because we're not a for-profit situation. You know what I mean? So we're able to train people, spend time mentoring, learning how to use different kinds of equipment, trying different types of edits. It isn't necessarily the grind that you find at, like, some conservative media outlets where it's like, hey, you have a quota. You got to do 2 videos a day, every day, no questions asked. And I get why that exists because it's a for-profit enterprise, but it doesn't leave a ton of room for, like, hey, it's Friday afternoon. I'm going to teach all you guys how to, like, set the ND filters on an FX9. Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yeah. So that's what we are going to be hiring for at Leigh Wolf on Twitter.
I was going to say, like, or on LinkedIn. Plug yourself in here.
Yeah. Well, anyone interested, look me up on LinkedIn. It's LeighWolf. You'll see creative director for the RNC. Send your resume over and we'll take a look and figure it out. But we're always looking for good people. And it really should be viewed as probably, not to sound too ridiculous, but it's probably the best place to start as a conservative Republican content creator.
I believe it. Well, because I've worked with you, and I know you see the value in creativity, letting people kind of on an individual basis, like, hey, I'm going to go let you fly, and when you need some help, just hit me up.
Right.
But also, too, in regards to you talking about creative space, like, it's one thing that the movement probably needs more than they even know. Yeah. And look, man, this is my job now, and I kind of fell into it. It's your job. I don't know if you chose this, but we got pretty sweet gigs,
Yeah, and I mean, part of the problem is there's there's a very logical approach to bringing in video people in a lot of these places, and I get why, because they have to make money.
Sure.
So they bring someone in to do a very specific job over and over and over again, and that's fine. I mean, you will learn a lot.
That's what they do in China.
I'm really glad I haven't named any media
I'm
outlets,
just kidding.
so no one can attribute it to that. But we, like I said, I mean, that's part of our mission at the Republican Party is it's not just winning elections. It's not just raising money to facilitate the winning of those elections. We also do a lot of training in all aspects of politics, including on the creative side. And that's why I think it's a great place to work. And it's also, if people just want to reach out and, get advice or what have you, I'm happy to do that. But it's pretty cool because my goal is to turn it into like a factory where people who are interested can come in, work for us for a cycle, learn a bunch of cool stuff, editing, cameras, what have you, and then go off to either another political entity or whatever. But boom, now we have one more conservative creator out there.
Nice, man. Well, let's cheers to that. I don't even know if I have any more beer, though. I'm empty.